if you don't, plan that family trip, right? If you don't make your doctor's appointments, if you don't do that kind of stuff, you burn out, right? And it's not healthy. And I think we've seen that a lot. And I think especially for, writers listening to this show, which a lot of times it's a solitary endeavor, right? It's you and your keyboard and the thoughts inside your head. And like, there's writing groups, those things are great, but like a lot of times you could have that tendency not to break out of that world. And I think it's important to do so.
Welcome to the Written Word Podcast, the podcast for authors who want to build a successful writing career. I am Vernon, and I'm here with Ricci Wolman, and this is the Written Word Media Pod.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Written Word Media Podcast, the podcast where Ricci and I go through everything that's happening in the world of indie authordom. And today we have something a little different that we're excited about. Ricci and I are going to play productivity ping pong. So we're going to each share a little bit of a hack. I'm pretty excited about it, Ricci, when we came up with the concept for the show. So, I think this is one of the things you and I both feel very strongly about and excited to talk about it.
Yeah, great to be here. We're recording on a Friday today, which is a little different. So a little bit of that end of week energy. So it's nice to do something fun.
I think it's appropriate that we're doing this. We have a meeting in 37 minutes, and we're trying to slip in the pod between now and then. And so it's very appropriate that it's about productivity. And I think before we get started, we're each going to share a few productivity tips that are hopefully super relevant for authors, but also broadly applicable for anybody. I think Ricci and I are both coming from different camps here when we talk about productivity. So Ricci, I'll let you talk about like your philosophy in a minute, but where I'm coming from is productivity is like a battle, right? Because I have a lot of attention problems. So for me, a lot of my strategies are around, managing myself, keeping myself focused, keeping those kind of things. Whereas for you, I think productivity is a little bit more of a fun subject and less of a guardrail thing.
Yeah, totally. Productivity is fun for me. I was that, kid who loved shopping for school supplies and lining up my pencils and had everything super organized on my desk and in my backpack. So it's just in my DNA. And then luckily for me, as I've been in my professional life, this whole school of how to be productive and how to optimize your time is having a moment. So there was all kinds of new things for me to learn and a ton of really interesting and cool tools. And stationery, I do have a stationery problem. I kind of like pillows. I can't really have enough pretty stationery and productivity planners and dashboards and all the things. So for me, it's kind of like a game. It's fun. And I think I tend to be kind of good at it just because that's where my lean has been personality-wise since I probably was born.
Yeah, I, on the other hand, was the kind of kid whose notebook, I would get to the very last minute and end up taking notes, on that, like the brown cardboard at the end of the notebook where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have any pages left because I wasn't planning for it. So coming from two different camps here, but let's get into it. Ricci, start us off. What is your number one productivity hack that you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so my very first one is around planning. So I think a lot of time people think about productivity as doing, but what I've actually found is the better you plan, the more productive you can be. And I'm going to explain what I do in terms of planning, and it might sound a little intense, but it's actually really not. So I would, say, give it a try, put your own spin on it. But what I like to do is I like to plan my week and I like to plan my days. And so what this looks like for me is usually like on Monday morning, I'll sit down, I'll pull out my Google Calendar because that's what I use. And then I'll have a piece of paper in front of me. Or I do have, like I said, a cute little productivity dashboard that has all the days of the week for the 5 working days on there. And I will write down a list of what I'm hoping to accomplish for the week. So that might be 3 things, it might be 6 things, but I dump it all out. I'm like, these are the things I want to get done. And then I look at Monday through Friday and I kind of pencil in which days I'm going to work on each thing. So it's kind of high level, broad strokes. But I take into account things like, on Tuesday I'm in meetings all day. So on that day, maybe none of my items make it onto the list. So let's say on Friday, I have to pick up the kids, or I'm doing something with kids on Friday afternoon. So I'll be like, okay, I need to put less stuff on Friday or less stuff on Thursday, whatever it might be. So I kind of plan at a high level. and look at the week. And a lot of the time, what this helps me do is say, actually, I've got 6 things on my list and there's no way I can get them done this week. So what are the top 3?
It's a dose of realism.
Yeah, right away, I get a really good reality check, and it makes me have to prioritize and say, okay, really, what are the most important things I want to get done? So that's kind of my like high level, this is what the week kind of looks like. And I have that, kind of up in front of me. And then every morning I come in and actually plan my day. So let's say this is a Monday morning, I've kind of got my high level week. And then I sit down and I say, okay, let's plan my day hour by hour. And again, I like to write things down. I don't know, for my brain, it just like works better than putting stuff onto digital calendar, which I know, Ferol, you're maybe different that way. But I like to write down, okay, say I'm sitting at my desk at 9 a.m. and actually say 9 a.m., prep and plan. And I give myself half an hour to do that. So I don't give myself a task at 9 a.m. so that I'm already behind. And then I put on all the meetings I have for the day, if I have meetings. And then I look at my high level plan and say, okay, I'm supposed to be working on task A today. And I find the buckets of time that I'm going to put that in. And so then what happens during the day is when I'm switching from task to task, I don't have to sit there and think about what am I going to work on next. I just look at my plan and I say, okay, it's 10 o'clock. This is what comes next. I'm done with this. Now I'm ready to move on to that. So I don't have this decision fatigue when I get to the end of the day. And I do find that when I get to the end of the day, I've mostly worked on the things that I was hoping to work on. The one little like micro hack in here is that I usually plan nothing for Fridays, because even though I look at my whole week and I think I've got it down, I always tend to be overly ambitious. Stuff happens that you don't expect. And so Friday is my overflow day. So when I get to the end of Thursday and I'm like, okay, these are things I didn't do, Friday is the day that I get to take all of that stuff and put it over there instead.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think, there's 2 camps. There's the digital camp and the pencil and paper camp. And I know everybody's kind of a little bit of a mix where you land. I think, the planning your day, and this is a quote that I've heard you say, so I'm attributing it to you, but it is, if you don't plan your day, somebody else will.
That's right.
Right. And so when you plan your day, one of the things that's so powerful about it is what you're supposed to be doing, and you don't get those train wreck days where everybody else needs your time. You're saying, I'm doing X or I'm doing Y. And so it's really like a little bit, not only is it a good way to sort of allocate work, but it's a little bit of a moat around the distractions that keeping them at bay.
Yeah, 100%. And so when you have incoming coming in and somebody's like, oh, can I grab 5 minutes of your time? Instead of just saying yes, because you weren't sure what you wanted to work on next, or you were in one of those kind of holes, you say, I can meet with you at 3 o'clock because that's when you're done working on your tasks. Or you can say, hey, what about doing that tomorrow? Because you have some structure to your day. So it's another really good point. And you're right. That is one of my favorite quotes. If you don't plan your day, someone else will. If you don't plan your life, someone else will. So it's important to have some intention and at least a sense of what you want to accomplish and where you're headed for the week.
Yeah.
What do you got, Ferol? What would be your number one productivity hack?
Yeah, right. So think about my world as like, ping pong's apt, right? There's a million different thoughts going at a million miles an hour. So I have a lot of energy. So it's around directing it, right, into one place, right? And sort of funneling that creative and energy into one zone. So the number one hack that I have is a clean desk. And I know that's going to sound silly, but like, I literally have nothing on my desk except for, my computer. I have a 3x5 note card and a glass of water, right? And that's it. And, that was not the way I've always done things. My desk used to be a disaster, and I would be like, it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm focused on my screen, not what's on my desk. But I think the environment, once you're really honest with yourself, matters a lot. So I keep everything off my desk. Obviously, I have papers and paperwork. Everybody does, permission slips from school, financial documents, all this stuff that you got to deal with. I keep those in a different desk, right? So if possible, like having a whole separate zone for that and then a focus zone. And so for me, my primary desk is my focus zone. And then there are all these things, we joked a little bit at the beginning about like how being productive is fun for you. For me, it's not fun. I don't like it. It's like, oh God, rules, so annoying, right? And I think
yes,
a lot of creatives out there listening, may resonate with that. And so what I do is I try to like trick myself into liking these things, right? So I get like, hey, I need to have my top 3 things I need to get done for the week. And I write those down on my little note card that I have at my desk. And I got really fancy, cool, expensive note cards, and I have a cool little wooden box that I put them in. And that's totally unnecessary, right? You go to CVS, spend $2 and get these 3x5 note cards, but it makes me feel cool and I like it. So like I look forward to writing those things down, right? And I bought myself some fancy Blackwing pencils, which are way too expensive for a number 2 pencil. Again, CVS and $2 would solve the problem, but
sounds like you have a stationary problem as well.
But buying these sort of cool things makes habits that you don't like a little more fun. And I think that's really important, right, for me and for everybody. And then, the final thing I do on that front is my phone, which I think everybody has the battle of attention with your phone. And I'm not going to sit here and say I've conquered it, but keeping your phone away from your workspace is really important. And I put it like on a separate dock, and I used to just kind of like plug it in nearby, and I'd always kind of look at it and it would somehow end up on my desk, and like I didn't like that. So I bought myself like a little Etsy, handcrafted wooden charging station. And now when I put it in there, it like connects and I feel good about like leaving it there. And so these little ways to kind of like give yourself a little hit of dopamine along with the things that maybe you're not so thrilled about. It's sort of the spoonful of sugar technique.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I head up to your workspace, I always jokingly call it the Bat Cave, because Ferol, it's so funny. Ferol likes to work in darkness. So his desk is like pristinely clean. All the lights are turned off. He's got his like black pencils and his like cool cards. And yet it has like one monitor. So super Batcave vibe. Whereas my space, like I open all the windows and I've got plants everywhere. But I think that's what's so cool about it, right? Like my environment is what speaks to me and what makes me feel like this is an environment where I'm happy and I can work well, and your environment is what speaks to you. So there's no right or wrong answer as to what that environment should be, but taking some time to figure out what environment makes you feel cool and what environment triggers the association with like, okay, now I'm sitting down and I'm jamming, bat go mode, or now I'm sitting down and I'm in like super fun productivity mode. That is a cool hack.
It is. And I think, anybody who's ever done a video call with me is like, oh, well, that sounds weird. Like your space is always so brightly lit. And like, I have to run around and turn on like all the lights, because when it's just me, it's like a dark little thing. The kids will come up to my office sometimes. They'll be like, whoa, Dad, I didn't know you were here, because all the lights are off and I'm totally quiet.
Oh, it's great.
Okay. All right. Hacks 1 and 2 from us. Ricci, what's your second productivity hack for the audience?
Okay, so my other one, and I think we'll see a pattern here, like I have my little rigid things and you have your things. But the second thing that I love as a productivity hack is I use something called the Pomodoro technique. And what this is, it's a technique where you work for a certain amount of time and then you're off for a certain amount of time. And generally what's recommended is 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And of course I have a gadget, right? So I have like this cool little timer that I just got on Amazon, like $10. And then what I do is when I sit down and I start my task, I just go and like I set it to the 25 minutes, and I put it down and I kind of work. And then when the timer goes off, I take a 5-minute break. And what's really important with the Pomodoro technique is when you take the break, you actually break. You can't sit, check email. You can't look at your screen. Yeah. You got to go walk away from your station. If you're working in like a space with other people, they actually recommend going and like chatting with other people, because it really gives your brain a total rest and puts it in a different mode. So I'll go downstairs, I'll make a cup of tea, or I'll go sit outside and like look at the birds for 5 minutes. And then you come back to your desk and you set your next 25 minutes. So it's almost like you're working in these sprints, but it has a really cool rhythm to it. And what it also does is it automatically builds in breaks to your day, because otherwise my tendency was to sit down and I would just go. And I could be heads down working for 4 hours, and then I'd look up and I'd be like, whoa, I've been working for 4 hours. And then in the afternoon, I'd find it difficult to have that kind of focus, because I'd basically like burnt up all my attention. Like I kind of went too long, too hard, burned too bright. And so this is like, it builds in these little breaks for me. And it also gives me a chance, just like physically to get up, stretch my body, like my neck and my shoulders don't hurt as much, because when you like get up and walk away from your desk, you just naturally, you're like, oh yeah, you do this, you know, you're moving around, you got a different position. I will say sometimes if I'm like in flow and in the zone, which sometimes I know a lot of writers have this where you're just writing, and that timer goes off. Sometimes I'm like, no, not right now. And I'll just set the next 25 minutes. So I'll get more like an hour cycle in. So I'm not like so rigid about it that I always do that. But typically I do it. And then if I'm in flow, I'll kind of skip one of the breaks just so that I can kind of keep going and stay in that like flow state.
So I know that you do this because I hear the little timer ding down the hall all the time. But what tasks do you find it's the most helpful for? And which are the ones where it doesn't help as much? Like how does this 25-minute cycle impact certain kinds of activities versus others for you?
Yeah, I would say generally it works pretty great for most tasks. Even the deep work tasks, like I'm a big believer in deep work and like I turn off, my phone and all of my stuff. And I'm like, I'm just going to work on this problem for 2 hours. And you would think that this technique might be disruptive for that, but I actually do find that it's helpful because even when I'm in deep work and I'm thinking about only one thing, taking that 5 minutes to kind of get up, stretch, is helpful. Where it absolutely is the most helpful and where it thrives the most is when you actually are trying to do 30-minute tasks or tasks that you don't want to run over too much. Yeah. So in that situation, the timer might go off. And when you walk away from your desk, you have to ask yourself, like, is this good enough? Am I done with this? Can I move on to something else? Or do I need to polish it up? Whereas sometimes if you kind of stay onto something, you just land up, maybe this is again just me, like polishing a shiny spoon, right? Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I've got enough here that I can send an email to the team or I can move on to my next task. So it's also just a natural break to kind of, pull me out of the task to be like, am I done? Am I close to done? Where am I in the flow of this particular thing I'm trying to get done?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, the sort of polishing a shiny spoon. Like there are times when work is done, but it's fun and enjoyable and you're proud of what you've sort of made or accomplished or designed or written. And so it's fun to kind of tweak and play with it and sort of stay in that world. It's not particularly productive. Yeah. And, we like to say at Written Word Media, inertia is powerful. And that means whatever you're doing, it tends to go that way until you stop it. And so I think one of the really nice things about this technique is you've built in checks on inertia. So you can ride it when it's valuable to you and you can stop it when it's not.
Yeah. Because, like working in Excel is like super fun for me. So sometimes I'll be doing, a financial model. I'll be looking at like, doing analysis on all the results. And I could spend all day doing that. And that's my happy place. So, it's helpful for that. Or if I'm doing something marketing, if I'm like, doing meta ads or reader reach ads, that kind of stuff is super fun for me. So it's really good to have to kind of come at it and be like, okay, you're just doing this because it's your favorite activity and you don't want to move on to the next one. Or are you doing it because the task is not actually complete yet?
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Ferol? What would your number 2 productivity hack be?
Yeah, so I think similar in turn, a lot of themes here around time blocking, which is really important, like how you allocate your time is your most valuable resource. For me, it's about batching, right? So I like to group things that are similar into one batch. And, it's funny, we kind of talked about the show as like a ping pong where we're going back and forth, but a lot of times what can happen is your attention can ping pong. So you're getting a text and then you're like back, you're out from writing and you're reading a text and then you're back. And that switching cost is like really, really costly for your attention and your productivity. And so what is really important is to batch, but sometimes you need those things, right? And so there are times where like, I've got to call and make a doctor's appointment. I've got to call and figure out some kind of bill, or I've got to do some paperwork. And so all these sort of admin tasks, I put them in one block on my calendar and then I knock them out. And calling the dentist and like paying our annual fee bills have nothing to do with each other, but they're the same kind of sort of lightweight. They're not like deep thought tasks, but they're important and they have to get done. But if I intersperse those things throughout the day, I'd be switching gears in my mind so often that it takes you out of flow of the other things that you're doing. And so you and I both talk about deep work, which, plug for that book, which is really great and somewhat game-changing for how I sort of think about work and life. But that's really an important way to do it, is taking these admin things, piling them up, and then putting them in the side. And, my dad used to say, when you pick up a piece of paper, action it, file it, or throw it away, but don't put it back down. And obviously that's a relic from another era, but it's the same idea. What he meant is like, if you pick up an email, right, and then you decide not to do it, or you snooze it and then you put it back, you've like spent the energy of figuring out what to do, but you haven't done it. You've made no progress. And so what I like to do with like the emails and things I have to get back to, if I have a block or a batch where I'm doing email, if I have something that I need to do based on an email, I'll read it and then I'll add a to-do that says like, reply to this email. and then I'll get rid of it. And so then I get to email 0, but then my to-do list is really long to get back to people on certain things. But every time I've picked up an email, I've actioned it, I've actually replied, or I've figured out what needs to happen to it. I've filed it, which is like putting it on a to-do list. And I think that's a really important productivity hack, because a lot of people can like check a text and then mark it as unread, or check a Slack message, mark it as unread, check an email, mark it as read. For those listening on audio, Ricci's raising her hand, and that doesn't get you anywhere, but it feels like you're working, you know, because like I'm checking stuff.
Yeah, I'm jealous of you, because when I've looked at your inbox, like Ferol does generally have like less than 5 emails sitting in his inbox at any given time. And I do bash my emails, but I have not been as good about the actioning piece of it. So I generally have, 30 or 40 emails sitting in my inbox at any particular time. I also have anxiety that if I like mark an email as read and add it to a list, that then I'm going to forget to respond to that person.
So that's like super common. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, part of my like attention problems is having, I'm forced to trust systems because I can't remember things. I just can't. Right. And so, I trust my system, and I do it the exact same way every time. So like I look at an email, and then if I have to reply to it, I put a to-do that says reply to this person, and I mark it as read and I move on. And I trust that that's going to work, because I don't really have another option.
Yeah, and it does, right? It does work for you. And just for the audience listening, when you say you have attention problems, what do you mean?
Yeah, so I have ADHD, or it was called ADD when I was diagnosed. And so what that means is that you just struggle to stay focused on one task. And so I have a lot of energy and a lot of creativity, but it's typically, you can think about it like a big, hard room. And if you threw like a super bouncy ball in there, it's like bouncing around a lot of time, right? So it's never staying on one wall. And so all of the systems that I've developed over the years are around how to keep things focused and keep that energy focused. And so instead of expending energy remembering things and focusing on things that I know I'm not going to be able to, or I'm going to fail, I have all these little fail safes that I do, and I write things down. But then when I sit down at my desk, I have all these little crumpled pieces of paper in my pocket, but I take them out, I put them on my to-do list, and I throw them away. And so, I park in the same spot when I go to the mall every single time, right? Because that way I always know where my car is.
I can attest to this. But it drives the rest of the family great, because we're all like, why are we parking so far away? And he's like, this is where I park when I go to the mall, so I never figure out my car.
Yeah, you put your keys in the same place, wallet in the same place. So all these little things are all designed so that they're systems that are designed to spend zero energy remembering sort of things that are sort of cluttering up my mind. And so that's a lot of the things that I've developed over the years are all around sort of making the most of the way my brain works.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great takeaway, right? You got to set up your systems, and then you got to trust your systems.
That's right.
And you got to batch your work so that you're not having this cost of switching all the time. So if you're an author, when you're sitting down to write, that's using a very different part of your brain than if you're setting up your marketing plan for the week, or if you're, maybe brainstorming characters and not writing. And so actually batching that work and then putting it on your plan for the day is really effective.
Yeah. And I think, one of the reasons I'm drawn to sort of automation and systems is because it works so well for me and it helps so much. And I think everybody can sort of leverage those things, but a lot of like energy goes into it, like figuring out a system once and then automating it so I don't have to think about it again. Yeah. And I think a lot of people who don't have that, who are able to pay attention, they don't sort of require that as often. But then as you get busier and busier, as you're trying to accomplish more and more, it sort of breaks, right? And so that's part of the reason why in Word Media we love building software for authors, because we work really hard to get something done once, and then we don't have to figure it out again, and we just do it hundreds or thousands of times again for our authors, and that's part of why we do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Ricci, what's your next one?
Okay, what's my next one? My third productivity hack is another one of these where you're not really doing anything at all. So it is celebrating your done list. So what I like to do on Friday is give myself a whole big pat on the back and look at everything I've done for the week. So the way my systems work is I do have, kind of my priorities and my checklists that I'm doing. So for me, I just sit down and I literally spend 5 minutes reading all the things that I did, seeing the check marks, like actually taking the win. And if you haven't kept a list all week, sometimes if I don't have a list handy, I will actually write down, hey, these are all the things that I accomplished this week. And some of them are work and some of them are just life, right? Like I got to, go support my daughter at her swim meet, or I got to have coffee with an author who needed some advice, or I had a call and mentored a potentially female entrepreneur. And so I put all of those things down and I look at them and I say to myself, wow, like, look how much you got done this week. Because what invariably happens, and the way that our psychology works as humans, is we always focus on the negative, not on the positive. So you get to the end of the week and you're like, oh, I didn't get to number 3 or number 6 on my.
Of course,
I thought I wanted to write 3 chapters and I actually only wrote 2. And if you have that mindset, what ends up happening is you get burnt out, because week after week you feel like a failure and then you lose your motivation to actually start fresh and put energy in the following week. So I love this because it just makes me feel really good. It's a great way to go into the weekend as well. It helps me switch my brain off and say, hey, you had a great work week. You did a ton this week. Now it's time to rest. Go into the weekend, do the fun things. It also really helps keep me motivated, because I look at the list and I'm like, whoa, I accomplished a ton, even though maybe I didn't feel like I did. Imagine what I'm going to accomplish next week when I have a clear week, which never actually happens. But it does help to keep that momentum going by celebrating those wins at the end of every week.
Got it. So talk to me about like what's on the list. Obviously there's to-dos. Do you put meetings? Do you put personal chores on there? Like what goes on the list that gets celebrated?
Yeah, so it's mostly like the things that I want to accomplish for work. I put on things that have to do, I'm like very big into taking care of like my body and my mind. So I'll put things like I took a walk every morning this week. I meditated twice this week, right? That kind of stuff. And then it's the relationship stuff, because that's really meaningful to me as well. And that's where, a decent amount of my time goes. The truth is I could probably be quote unquote more productive if I spent more time just working on work tasks and not giving my time in other places. But, I do really like to give back by being out in the community, whether it's the entrepreneurial community here in the Triangle, or whether it's taking calls with authors and helping them with their stuff. And then there's also just the family stuff, which honestly is my top priority, right? So being a parent, having 2 kids, it's really busy. But instead of being like, oh, I ran around picking up my kids, when I look at my wins for the week, part of the win is I picked up my kids every week. I sat and had, a snack with them when they got home from school and we had time to sit and chat, or, we did something really fun together one night, or, I planned a family trip together. So those things that do take up a decent amount of my time, those get put down on my wins list, because life is not just about what you're doing for work. Life is about what you're doing with your time, where you're spending your time. And some weeks that work productivity might be lower, but that's because you spent more time on relationships and family or health. And for me, that's okay. But it's a good reminder, because we live in a culture that really emphasizes productivity at work. And there's not a lot of messaging around, hey, if you're spending your time on some of these other really important things that you care about deeply, that is a positive. So I really like to take the end of the week to just reflect on all the things that felt really good to me and all the things that I did get quote unquote done.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's like a great takeaway for everybody, right? There's more to crossing something off your list than just getting it done, right? There's how did it make you feel? And I think, the other thing that people don't always take into account is how important that other stuff is actually to that work productivity, right? If you don't, plan that family trip, right? If you don't make your doctor's appointments, if you don't do that kind of stuff, you burn out, right? And it's not healthy. And I think we've seen that a lot. And I think especially for, writers listening to this show, which a lot of times it's a solitary endeavor, right? It's you and your keyboard and the thoughts inside your head. And there's writing groups, those things are great, but like a lot of times you could have that tendency not to break out of that world. And I think it's important to do so.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of authors attend conferences or join masterminds, because it is solitary and it is lonely. And similarly, running a business has a lot of parallels. Authors, you're running an author business. Ferol and I are here, we're running a business that supports authors. But when you go to these conferences, you could potentially look at them and say, oh, I took 3 days and I didn't work on my, actually writing my book. But you come away from those experiences so inspired and with so many new ideas. And so that's a win, and that should be chalked up as a win. And so spending time in places that inspire you, that feed you, that refuel you, and looking at those as productivity wins and not just things that you're doing that are taking you away from, quote unquote, what you think your work is.
Yeah.
So we have like 5 minutes left because we do have a meeting to get to. So take us over the finish line, Ferol. What is your final productivity hack?
Okay, so we've hinted at this a little bit, so it's a good one to end with. But the thing that most people have on them at all time is the thing that can help them the most. That's your phone, right? So your phone can be a real time and attention suck, but it can also be really helpful. And I think that most of what we talked about now is kind of like mindset and planning and that kind of stuff. This is sort of like an actual tool, right? I use Siri, which is built into your iPhone, but Google has the same thing if you use an Android phone. And I just use the reminders. So as I'm going throughout my day, anything that happens that I have to remember something. So sometimes I'm on a walk and I have an idea and I just say, hey, Siri, remind me to do X, Y, and Z at 10 a.m. And I always have it remind me to do those things at 10 a.m. because that's when I know for sure I'll be at my desk, right? And when I'm at my desk and the reminder fires, I do the same thing, right? I pick up the reminder, I put it on my to-do list, and I mark it as complete. So the to-do list is the clearinghouse. Siri is what helps me take notes throughout the day, right? And I have a conversation, you and I have a conversation in the kitchen. Oh, can you do this? And I know there's 100% chance I'm going to forget that. So I take 5 seconds and I ask Siri to remind me, and then I do forget it. And I have zero recollection of that happening, but the little reminder pops up and then I'm able to take care of it. And I think using your voice is one of the really cool things that you can do now with modern technology. And it does, you can use the Notes app on your iPhone, or like there's a million little like voice note apps. And I know you actually do a lot of voice stuff with texting to save you time texting and, doing ChatGPT queries about, recipes and just random stuff throughout life. And so I think, the hack is use your voice as much as you can, because trying to hold something in your head until you get to a keyboard, you get to a notepad, there's a lot of room for slippage there.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. The technology is finally there where you can use voice for these types of things. The other reason I use voice a ton is I am just so sick of looking at my screen. So even when I'm texting with friends or family, I'm just like, I've been looking at a screen all day and now I'm looking at my phone screen. So instead of typing out my text responses, I just, hit the little voice button and I dictate what I want to say. And then I press send. And it's not, I'm not looking at the screen. Instead of looking at the screen for a minute, I'm looking at a screen for like 2 seconds on the send. But I feel that has really helped me with my screen fatigue. And I know a lot of authors now use, dictation when they're on walks and you have ideas for characters, or you can literally dictate a paragraph, and the tech is so good that it really does get the language right. I do that too. I try and walk every morning and I try and not be on my technology, but sometimes I'll get an idea or I'll get a thought or I'll remember something I have to do and I'll pull out my phone and I'll just be like, I'll say it. And then when I get back to my desk, I'll go to my notes app. Sometimes I do that and I'm like, this is such a great idea. And I, talk it into my phone while I'm walking. And then I get back to my desk and I read it and I'm like, oh, that wasn't as good an idea as I thought.
That's okay. You didn't forget it. It didn't go.
But I didn't forget it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think amazing episode, really cool to have a bunch of different things. I would love to hear from the audience, from all the writers who are listening. What are your productivity hacks? Maybe we'll do a second show with some of the stuff that we get from our writers. But it was really fun to go through this with you and have, sort of two camps of productivity to get stuff from.
We'll do a quick lightning round and just recap our 3. because I've already forgotten them. So,
well, fortunately, we wrote them down. So Ricci's hacks are: plan your week and your day, or somebody else will. Let's see. 2, use Pomodoro. That's the 25 minutes and 5-minute breaks. And celebrate your done list. Does that sound right?
You got it.
There we go.
And your hacks are: set up your writing environment, be it a bat cave or a florist, whatever speaks to you.
Full Batman mode.
Batch your tasks. So don't switch from task to task. Figure out, put all your admin in one basket and attack it all at the same time. And use Siri, use voice as much as possible to capture your thoughts and remind you of things that you need to do.
There it is.
Did I get it right?
You got it. Nailed it.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope that some of these tips help you be a little bit more productive in your writing career. And until next time, I'm Ferol Vernon with Ricci, and we will talk to you next time.